I've made a mistake. I bought this on purpose with real US dollars.
Why did I do this?
I take full responsibility for this overhydrated mistake because I trusted the seller's words. I agreed to purchase this. This is my fault. Now, I buy engines from multiple different sources. I get them from repair shops, from other salvage yards, some core suppliers, and even individuals on occasion. And most of the time, I have to buy them sight unseen. Now, I will say, the goal with buying engines is not to get some crazy video. It's to dismantle these engines so that I can sell the good parts for a profit, recycle the rest, and that is a major part of my business. Occasionally, I'll get something exceptional that makes a video, and I post a teardown video every single week on the most exceptional things, not the boring stuff, hopefully. In this case, I got a phone call from one of my normal, regular suppliers that I've had a great history with. Okay, I've had a couple slightly misdescribed core engines, but nothing egregious. Everything has been just a little worse than described, and he called me up and said, Eric, I've got another GM62 with a transmission. It's out of a Camaro that was flooded. Flooded. Okay, flood cars to me are cars that were underwater and then not underwater. Because I've bought many flood cars. I bought them out of Florida, saltwater floods. I bought freshwater floods. I know how to handle a flooded engine. It is not a problem. But flood, the word flood, he might have used some words to kind of guarantee the sale. Now, I'm not blaming him for this because, again, I agreed to buy it, but look, the guy didn't intentionally screw me over. I helped him screw myself over, unfortunately. Now, I do have people that try to get one past me with bringing their old core engines back. I've sold lots of Gen 3 and Gen 4 engines that are completely dressed. People bring me bare stuff back. Or I'll sell a Gen 4 6-liter from like an 07 up 3/4 ton van or truck, and they bring me back a Gen 3 5.3 dressed in Gen 4 stuff as if I can't read a casting number. Come on. I've seen thousands and thousands of LS engines. I can identify just about anything from almost any vantage point. And that is why when this one came back, I took one little look at it and I just hung my head and kicked it to the corner of my shop over a year ago. Now, the situation with this was a different one because this wasn't a core return for something I sold. This was another salvage yard. They called me up. I left the check. I wasn't there when it got dropped off. And well, now I'm the proud owner of this hunk of scrap. Yay. That was a year ago, and last week I decided to rip the Band-Aid off, drag this thing home to see if I could do anything with it besides chuck the whole thing in the scrap bin. And the first thing I wanted to do was figure out what the heck it was from. So the first thing I noticed is that this has 823s on it, a car intake manifold, and a two-wheel drive 6L80. Now, I think, or I thought I remembered the guy telling me it was out of a Camaro, so I kind of went that route. Now, it could be an LS3 or it could be an L99, and to know the difference, you can look right in here through this crusty stuff and see that it does not have a flat valley pan. It has a variable lifter oil manifold. There's the connector for it right there. So it's a DOD engine, which means that this is an L99, and I didn't know any other details on this at all. Obviously, you can see, look how absolutely crusty this thing is. There's mud caked everywhere. This is nasally offensive to be around. My whole garage smells terrible. I'm gonna definitely use my attic fan after this. And it looks like they went through the effort. Well, I guess the starter is still there, but they definitely unbolted the accessories from it. They cut the harness. Not that there was any value there. They cut the drive shaft. They just cut this thing out of the car and brought it over. And then I wanted to know more details. So here is where I think the story gets a little more interesting. I wanted to know what this was from and if I could find any information. So I dug around on the block and I cleaned up this little area right here. Let's see if we can get focused on it. That right there is the last 8 of the VIN. And because you have the last 8 of the VIN, you can see that it starts with a B. I think it's B9103110, which means B is 2011. That's the 10th digit. So this is out of a 2011 Camaro V8 with an automatic transmission. Armed with the last 8 of the VIN, it was time to then get the entire VIN. Now, there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can definitely call your local GM dealer's parts department, give them the last date, and they should be able to give you the rest of the VIN. In this case, it was a weekend, and curiosity was killing me. It was like my dog looking at a squirrel through the window. I had to know more details on this, because clearly this wasn't just a flood. So what I ended up doing is I hopped on my favorite auction websites that I buy cars from, and I took the first 9 from about 20 different 2011 Camaro V8s with automatic transmissions, because you can sort by that. That would give me the closest way to decode it. And after about 17 or 18 VINs, I put an entire VIN into RepairLink, which is what I use to decode, I know Stella, is what I use to decode my VIN numbers. And it decoded a 2011 Camaro, an orange 11 Camaro, and it was the right one. It was at least the right engine and transmission, and it looked right. So then I Googled the VIN number. Oh. So the yard that sold me this drivetrain bought the car knowing what it looked like, and then told me, yes, it's out of a flood. A flood. Oh. Okay. Seeing the Google images, I knew there were more auction photos. So I hopped on a program I use to make sure I'm not the flip at the auction. I think Scott at VCore covers lots of flipper sue auctions that do a bad job at making cars seem less bad than they actually are. And I use StatVin for that because I can look up what it sold for, what it looked like the first time it ran through. I'm not sponsored by them. It's just a program I use. And my. I can see why this car only sold for $500. I would have never, ever bid on this thing. Ever. There is nothing to reclaim from this car. You're going to get cats, maybe. You're going to get scrap weight, and you're done. Unless you find some schmuck like me to buy the drivetrain as if somehow I'm going to do something positive with it. Look at the interior. So then I decided to run a Carfax on it. Now, like many 5th gen Camaros, it had a few owners, 4 or 5 at the point where the car was stolen in 2020. And normally, now I've seen many stolen Carfaxes, and normally it'll show when the car's recovered, there'll be a salvage title issued, or whatever the situation was. And then at the end of March of 2024, there's a bunch more activity, and it says that the car was recovered after theft, and then there's a whole bunch of damages listed. So that means the car was stolen and recovered almost 4 years later. 4 years. But it was also titled out of Paducah, Kentucky. So then I thought, you know what? Let's see what Google will come up with. And I decided to Google 2011 Camaro stolen, recovered, Paducah, Kentucky, and whoa, there's a news story on it. There's a news story on the same car that was at the auction the other salvage yard bought, and a YouTube diver found the car under 8 feet of water in the Ohio River where it had been for nearly 4 years. Well, that explains a lot. But 4 years underwater? Call that a flood? I don't think so. Just for a point of reference, I have bought and dismantled several cars that were in Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Ian, and some of those cars were underwater for days in salt water, which is much more corrosive than fresh water, and none of them, and I mean none of them, not a single one looked this bad. All of them. I've even torn down several of those engines on the channel in the past, and none of them looked this bad. Yep, they were rusted up. Yep, there were some science experiments going on in the combustion chambers, and it looked bad. I don't think it's going to be as bad as this. I think this is going to be so much worse that I don't even anticipate getting it completely apart. I don't know if that's possible at this point, and the biggest factor here is time. It was underwater for almost 4 years. That does a lot. There's a lot of chemical reactions. There's a lot of things happening, corroding and degrading, and I will just be happy if we get to see what the inside looks like. Now, can we get the transmission off? Can we get the transmission apart? Should I even try? Well, yeah, that's why it's here. Recovering vehicles from bodies of water is a rather expensive endeavor, but As of somewhat recently, the last decade or so, there have been several YouTube channels that have exploded in popularity. They post videos pulling cars and trucks out of ponds and rivers and lakes. Oftentimes they were there for years or even decades. And in the process, they also solved some missing persons cases, which was not the case in this vehicle's situation. This was an empty car that was dumped after it was stolen, at least so we're told. And they also clean up the waterways in the process. It's a really wonderful thing that these people have turned into a great business. But every time I watch one of those videos, I have this burning question. I want to know, just how bad does that engine look inside? Have you ever wondered that? They pull a car that's been in the river for 5 years. What does that look like on the inside? Well, in the next video, I'm sorry, I didn't want to post all of this in one video and muddy the waters. Sorry, I can't help myself. In the next video, I'm going to do my best to tear this thing down, to salvage everything I can. I hope I can salvage the plastic intake manifold, maybe the oil pan. I don't even know if I'll be able to get it all the way apart. I don't know if the bolts are going to snap the heads off. I'm going to have to use a huge variety of tools that I don't normally use on this channel, and being at home, I don't have heavy equipment. We'll figure that out. That'll be in the next video, which is just a few days away, or maybe the next day. It depends on when I post it. Either way, the next video, I've got my work cut out for me. This is not going to be torn down on a stand. It's going to be torn down on the floor or hanging off my cherry picker. I'm going to do my best. No promises. But I hope you enjoyed this video, this precursor to a terrible time, a big financial blunder on my part. Let's just say I'm not buying cores from that guy anymore. As always, I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all. And I'll catch you in just a few days.